Next, I have the honor of introducing our speaker for today. The commencement address will be given by Laurie Jacobi. Laurie received her BFA in graphic design from the University of Illinois. She worked as a professional designer for 10 years in Minneapolis and was honored with many prestigious national and international awards. She's immersed herself in American Indian lore, making jewelry pieces that embody the spiritual meaning and its significance. Her unique works of art using Japanese rice paper, birch bark, and other natural elements quickly became in high demand and led to many commissions. She began working with Faribault Woolen Mills to launch a collection of designs of woolen blankets. From this, she designed a high-end handmade coats, jackets, skirts, vests, and hats, all inspired by her Scandinavian background. Laurie's attention to detail, craftsmanship, and artistry is sought after, and those who have a Jacobi piece in their collection treasure it for its uniqueness and enchantment. As she will tell you, each piece has a story behind it. Her work is true embodiment of its heritage, and her experiences and her beliefs as an artist and designer. She has truly found her path, and her artistry is a testament of her experiences as a student at the School of Art and Design. Please welcome Laurie Jacobi.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me to speak here today. This is an honor beyond words for me. Congratulations, graduates. 30 years ago, I graduated with a BFA in graphic design. As I sat there in my cap and gown, I never imagined that I would be standing here 30 years later. Nor could I imagine where my life and work would eventually take me. It was here at the University of Illinois that I received an education that proved to be an excellent foundation for a successful career in design. But more importantly, it was here that I found my philosophy of life. While a student, I took a class called Ikebana, or Japanese flower arranging, from Professor Kimiko Gunji. She taught us that when you cut a flower to arrange it, you are cutting its life short. So your job is to make that flower as beautiful as you can in the short time that it has left to live. She challenged us to do the same with our lives, that we need to make them as beautiful as we can in the short time that we have to live. And that message really hit home with me because I was an older student returning to school after recovering from a diagnosis and treatment of cancer. I didn't think I would make it to 30 years old. After graduating, I moved to Minneapolis for the well-considered reason that I'd watched too many Mary Tyler Moore episodes. And the quality of my portfolio landed me a job at the hottest new design firm in town. But it was a humbling experience to find that at that point, I was just considered trainable. I still had a lot to learn and couldn't believe how hard I was expected to work. And I did, 24/7, eventually starting my own firm with a partner. We won all the national and international awards there were to win at the time, always under stress to compete for bigger projects and more recognition. But another diagnosis of cancer was a wake-up call that something wasn't right in my life. I certainly wasn't making it very beautiful. So I left the business in the city and I moved up to the woods of northern Minnesota, following a dream of mine since I was a child growing up in inner city Chicago. I lived alone in an abandoned ski resort with my 2 cats. And to make a living, I began selling jewelry that I made out of found objects like birch bark and Japanese paper and feathers and porcupine quills that I harvested from roadkill. It was not an easy time. I was struggling. My friends and colleagues all thought that I should move back to the city and resume my old life. But I found myself on long walks in the woods thinking of what Professor Gunji had taught me about really observing nature and appreciating the lessons it had to teach me. I learned the stories of the Ojibwa people who lived on nearby reservations. Their spiritual connection to the natural world was similar to that of the Japanese. And I felt the trees were telling me that all would be well. I began to experience firsthand the healing power of the beauty around me. Along the way, I met some interesting characters who lived in the woods, who made the world's best birch bark canoes and snowshoes. What struck me about them is that they were not motivated by winning awards or competing with others. They followed their own goals. They cultivated their eccentricities. And they just wanted to make the most beautiful functional objects they possibly could. There was a wonderful quote by Goethe about commitment that proved true for me. He said, "There is one elementary truth. The moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. All sorts of things occur to help that would never otherwise have occurred. A whole stream of events issues from the decision, raising to one's favor all manner of unforeseen accidents and meetings and material assistance which no man could have dreamed would come his way." And that is exactly what happened to me. The cabin of my dreams appeared, and people began giving me design work and commissioning me to do wall hangings and other art so that I could afford to buy it and renovate it. I did, and then a representative of a woolen mill in Minnesota called one day who had seen my graphic design work and my jewelry, and he wanted to know if I'd be interested in designing a line of Indian blankets for the mill. I said yes, even though I had no experience designing textiles. All I knew was that as a graphic designer, I wanted to communicate a message, and I wanted that message to be about the healing power of nature. I wanted them to have the simplicity of a Japanese flower arrangement, every element having meaning, and I wanted them to be beautiful. My first collection, based on the legends of the Ojibwa Indians, was a great success, and I went on to design several more collections, eventually turning to my own Swedish heritage for inspiration. I was no longer looking for recognition, but it came anyway. The blankets appeared in catalogs all over the country. Robert Redford ordered 25 for his movie, The Horse Whisperer. I've seen them used in powwows and given as gifts on the reservation. The King and Queen of Sweden were presented with one from the American Swedish Institute in Minneapolis. And a dream therapist in Seattle uses them to wrap returning war veterans when doing healing therapy from PTSD. He tells me it is a sacred time for the soldiers who feel safe and comforted, wrapped in the symbols and meaning that are woven into the blankets. My dear friend and business partner, Mary Jane Miller, who, by the way, has a degree in art history, began experimenting with making clothing out of my blankets, and our business evolved over time. Designing and creating garments out of blankets I now have woven at the Pendleton Woolen Mills. We have customers all over the U.S. and 5 other countries. I never thought I would become a clothing designer, nor could I imagine where that would take me. One of our customers was a diplomat to Kazakhstan who fell in love with our work. As a result, I received an invitation to serve as a cultural envoy to 2 remote cities in Kazakhstan a year and a half ago. I was to share my work with wool artisans there who needed economic development assistance. I was asked to teach them about design. I have to admit that I was intimidated. Here I was going to the heart of the Great Silk Road to share my work in wool with people that Genghis Khan called the people of the felted walls 700 years ago. What could I